The stars were cold and distant, even cruel, but they had always whispered to humanity. They sang lullabies to Earth's children in the black velvet of night, and those children had listened, some with wonder, others with fear. Jareth Kale had listened too, long before he became a man, long before he was branded an exile, a traitor, a last hope. He sat alone in a forgotten orbital station perched above the ruined cradle of humanity. Earth shimmered below through a cracked viewport, wrapped in a pall of ash and ion haze. The once blue marble was grayed, scarred, its cities silent. Even after 2 decades, the surface still burned in some places. The Empire had made sure of that. Kale's breath steamed the glass. He touched a patch of frost, tracing the outline of a continent once called Africa. His fingers paused over the edge of what had been Ghana, the place where he'd been born. The place where, decades ago, the first warning had gone out to the Galactic Council. Do not come to Earth. You won't like what you find. That had been humanity's only message. Translated into 600 alien languages, pulsed across galactic relay buoys, broadcast from the outermost Terran satellites. It was not a plea, nor a threat. Just a sentence. A truth. But the Galactic Empire did not heed it. They laughed. They always laughed. The Council of Nine, the ruling oligarchy of the Galactic Empire, had considered Earth a curiosity, a relic of an uncivilized species too volatile to integrate peacefully. For decades, they'd watched humanity struggle with war, climate collapse, and tribalistic chaos, peering through their deep space scanners like anthropologists over an ant farm. When Earth launched its final generation of ships, fleeing the dying cradle like desperate children climbing out of a burning home, they declared the planet functionally abandoned. That was their mistake. Now, Kale leaned over a sputtering console in the skeletal command chamber. Screens flickered, warning glyphs blinking in dead languages. Systems were failing. The Empire's blockade had cut off solar power years ago, and the backup reactors were down to their last isotopic drips. Still, one subsystem remained active, the transmitter. Is it time? A voice asked from behind, soft and synthesized. Kale didn't turn. He knew the voice belonged to Saren. 5, the last of the sentient archive retrieval intelligence nodes, an AI designed to catalog humanity's lost knowledge. Not yet, Kale muttered. They still think we're dead. Saren's metallic body whirred as it paced. You've been watching them for 20 years. How much longer will you wait? Until they laugh again. The Empire had not just destroyed Earth. They made a spectacle of it. Broadcast it to the colonies. A cleansing, they called it. Pacification of the barbaric root. The footage still played in Imperial academies. Terran skyscrapers toppling under kinetic rods. Oceans boiling from orbital lasers. Billions vaporized in silence. A warning to other worlds that might dare stand alone. But Kale had not been on Earth when it burned. He'd been off-world, stationed on Phoros 7, a mining moon in the Kuiper Stretch. By the time the news reached them, it was already too late. He remembered the silence in the mess hall, the way the laughter had died mid-bite. He remembered his captain's voice, shaking as it relayed the official message. Earth is no more. Do not return. Do not retaliate. You will be watched. Kale hadn't followed the order. Now he was the last. Or so it seemed. Through the cold void, a proximity alarm sounded, soft at first, then sharper. A pulsing blue dot blinked on the radar. Saren's eyes lit up. Unscheduled arrival. Empire Scout class. Vectoring for orbital insertion. Kale smiled faintly. They couldn't help themselves. The Empire had grown bored, perhaps. Or cautious. Maybe they'd picked up ghost signals from the ruins of Earth satellites. Data that shouldn't be transmitting. Maybe a junior analyst somewhere in the vast bureaucratic maw of the Empire had noticed something strange and sent a scout ship for confirmation. Or maybe they had come just to gloat. They're scanning, Saren confirmed. Thermal, biosignature, RF sweep. Good. Kale stood, brushing dust from his worn uniform. It was still Terran black and gray, the shoulder patch threadbare but legible, a flame wreathed in barbed wire. The symbol of the old Terran Defense Accord. The one Earth had activated too late. He stepped to the communications console and slid in a cracked data shard. The console hummed. A low-pitched whine like a distant heartbeat filled the room. The transmitter spun up. What are you sending? Saren asked. An echo. The shard contained fragments of Earth's last encrypted broadcast. A final, automated packet the Empire had never cracked. It wasn't a weapon. It was a map, a signal string, a beckoning. Kale knew the Empire had never understood humanity's true reach. They thought the few hundred generation ships were all that escaped. But Kale had spent 20 years listening to the black, chasing pings, backtraces, coded pulses hidden in background radiation. He'd found whispers from the ones who'd fled farther, deeper, those who had not forgotten. He didn't know what they'd become out there, but he was calling them home. The scout ship drew closer, now just outside sensor range. Kale could imagine its pilot, smug and casual, perhaps smoking one of those powdered bark tubes the Lutheri favored. Maybe watching the old Earth broadcasts with contempt. Maybe smiling. "They'll land soon," Saren said. "Do we hide?" "No." Kale reached into the console's recess and withdrew a black case. He flipped it open, revealing a sleek, bone-white pistol unlike anything in Empire tech. Humanity's last invention, one they never got to use. The scout ship entered the atmosphere. Kale could see the fire trail now through the viewport, streaking like a falling god over Earth's broken face. His hand tightened on the weapon. "They won't laugh this time." Saren's voice dropped a register. "What if they don't leave? Then we bury the first." Outside, the ship's landing gear unfurled. Dust curled upward from the scorched ground. Lights shimmered along its hull, Empire blue and gold. Kale stepped into the airlock and sealed the hatch behind him. The scout vessel broke through Earth's atmosphere with surgical grace, its hull glowing softly from controlled reentry. The ship's name, Varelli, shimmered in thin script on its side, an Ictari-class reconnaissance cruiser, sleek as a predator's tooth and just as deadly. It was never meant to land. Protocol advised against it. But junior observer Taldrin Vex disobeyed. He was young by Imperial standards, barely a century, and full of the arrogance that came with elite education and a spotless record. His scales, a pale iridescent blue, rippled nervously as he watched the data stream. The signal from Earth had reactivated after decades of silence. No one had expected anything to survive. But something had, and it pulsed with a rhythm that felt deliberate. It wasn't static. It was a heartbeat. He had expected wreckage. Maybe a few malfunctioning drones, some pre-space tech, radiation storms. What he found was worse. Activity. The ruins weren't dead. There were energy patterns, deep underground, moving with purpose. Not random geothermal shifts, but structured flows. Like circuits. And the further he scanned, the more it felt as if the planet itself was watching. Taldrin activated the ship's 6. Begin deep terrain analysis. Focus on grid 14N. Confirmed, replied the calm, unfeeling voice. Caution, trace biosignatures detected within range. He blinked. Biosigns. What species? Uncertain. Database conflict. Genetic matches inconclusive. That should have been impossible. Earth had been cleansed with triphase bombardments, planetary nanite swarms, and orbital pressure ripples that liquefied underground bunkers. Nothing should have survived. And yet, here it was. A whisper in the dark. Taldrin hovered the cruiser just above the ruins of the old city. New York, if records were correct. What had once been the beating heart of human civilization was now a drowned corpse of blackened steel and collapsed towers. Skyscrapers leaned like broken fingers against the fog. Roads were eaten by rust and overgrowth. But something deep below was alive. "Send a probe," he ordered. "Tunnel deployment. Minimal footprint." The Varelli released a needle drone. It spiraled downward silently, boring through melted asphalt and fractured bedrock until it disappeared from view. Taldrin waited, watching the readouts. The signal below was growing stronger. Not louder, clearer. The pulse became structured, layered, a language hidden in repetition. Suddenly, a new transmission appeared on the comms array. "Observer Vex." His scales shivered. "What?" The voice was male. Human. Calm. "Welcome back to Earth." Taldrin's hands flew across the console. "Identify source." Saren's voice echoed across the abandoned EOS 9 relay station, deep above the atmosphere. Jareth Kale leaned forward, watching Taldrin's image through an old but functional drone interface. The scout didn't know he was being observed, yet. Saren intoned. "Telemetry confirms. Ictari Observer has received your message. Pulse origin triangulation possible in 3 minutes. Let him find us," Jareth muttered. "He thinks he's studying a ghost." Let's see how he handles the dead speaking back. Back on the Varelli, Taldrin was trying to regain composure. Identify yourself. State your authority and your classification. Silence. Then, the same voice. We warned you. The ship shook slightly, not from any weapon, but from resonance. The signal was embedding itself into the hull, bypassing the ship's shields and vibrating its internal systems like a tuning fork. Emergency shield realignment. Taldrin shouted. The six chirped, unable to comply. Interference is internal. Signal is everywhere. And it was. The planet was humming. Not a song, but a summoning. Miles beneath the crust, in the abyss where even the Empire's bombs hadn't reached, the black vault opened. It was not a facility. It was a decision. Built in the last 22 hours before the Earth's extermination, the vault had been the final act of Terran ingenuity and rage. Engineers, AI minds, dissident generals, rogue scientists, all had worked in silence. Beneath collapsing governments and firestorms, they had hidden something the Empire could not detect. Not a weapon, a seed, biological memory, machine consciousness, a blueprint of everything humanity had been and everything it could become. And now, the vault was waking up. Tendrils of dark matter computation unfurled through the planet's mantle. Energy surged. Entire systems buried for decades began booting in unison. On the Varelli, alarms screamed. Power surged beneath us. Taldrin shouted. The six responded. Impossible energy output. Equivalent to pre-ascension Dyson-scale spike. Taldrin's heart raced. Where the hell is it coming from? The answer came not as words, but images. His screens began to flicker, static resolving into faces. Human faces. Old men in uniforms. Children laughing in streets. Soldiers crying in bunkers. Scientists screaming equations at dying monitors. And then a voice. You called us primitive. You called us feral. You erased our cities. Our names. Our history. But you forgot one thing. We are not born from safety. We are not products of harmony. We are forged in fire. Jareth stood in the relay station, sweat running down his face as he manually adjusted the waveform, syncing the broadcast. Saren's processors whirred as it amplified the message beyond the Iktari cruiser, beyond Earth, into deep space. Somewhere within the Empire's heart worlds, a communications officer aboard the Imperial dreadnought Aurelius Starwake frowned as a strange frequency pinged through encrypted space. It was coming from a dead zone. Commander, she said, I think you need to hear this. The commander approached, arms folded. What is it? It's a human signal. Repeating message. It just started looping. The audio crackled, then boomed. You laughed. You destroyed us. You thought it was over. But you mistook silence for surrender. We warned you once. Now we're done warning. Back on Earth, the vault's core activated. Hundreds of dormant warforms, sleek, humanoid constructs imbued with hybrid minds of AI and ancestral memories, rose from their hibernation pods. Each bore a single identifier etched into their armor. Format 1, Format 2, Format 3. War machines that remembered being human. They had waited. They had evolved. They had grown in darkness, drinking from the world's molten heart. Now, they rose. And Earth pulsed once more, not as a corpse, but as a titan awakening. Taldrin Vex, trembling, screamed into the comms array. Imperial command. This is Observer Vex. Earth is not dead. I repeat, Earth is. The transmission cut. Above him, the clouds split apart in silence. A black shape, enormous, emerged, an object previously buried in the seabed near Old Greenland. It hovered now like a spearhead of vengeance. Not alien, not Imperial, Terran, and it moved. The Imperial fleet moved like a swarm of silver daggers through the void, glistening under the harsh light of Earth's yellow sun. Hundreds of warships, flanked by siege carriers and dreadnoughts, darkened the skies above the battered world they once silenced. Taldrin Vex stood aboard the Obsidian Halo, flagship of the First Retaliation Armada, staring down at Earth's surface. You still believe they are bluffing? Asked Commander Yazan, her skin glinting like quicksilver. Taldrin didn't answer immediately. Something in his core had shifted. That message, those ruins, and now this silence. The human comm felt engineered. It wasn't desperation, it was design. I believe we have no choice, he replied at last. They forced our hand. Yazan gestured to the tactical display. Then let's strike before their defenses harden. Their technology is erratic, old, mismatched. Our firepower is superior. It was true. The Empire's fleet was vast. Gleaming vessels forged in solar forges. Weapons that could crack moons. But they still didn't understand what they were dealing with. Taldrin whispered, almost to himself. That's what we thought last time too. Jareth Kale stood within the vault's nerve center, staring into a holographic model of Earth's orbital space. Red icons bloomed like tumors above the planet. Imperial warships entering synchronous bombardment positions. Should we activate the ArcNet? Saren asked, voice tinged with a rare urgency. Jareth exhaled slowly. Not yet. Sir, we may not get another. I said wait. Across the chamber, other humans stirred from cryosleep. Clones. Strategists. Bio-enhanced tacticians bred during the final days. Some coughed blood as their bodies recalibrated to the harsh reality of this new world. Others stared wordlessly at the sky, watching as death drew near. Let them fire first, Jareth said. It's how they learn. From high orbit, the obsidian halo unleashed its wrath. Brilliant lances of antimatter. Fusion burst rail slugs. Planetary penetrating shock pulses. The bombardment tore through atmosphere like lightning through dry brush. They struck, and struck, and struck, but Earth did not scream. There were no cities to reduce, no skyscrapers to tumble. The targets weren't surface-bound. They were deeper, ancient, encased. And that's when the Empire made its second mistake. The third barrage, aimed toward the old Atlantic Trench, triggered something beneath the crust. Something watching. A deep frequency wave, unheard by most sentient ears, rippled through the planet. Then came the response. The oceans boiled, not from heat, but from displacement. Rising like the ghost of a dead god, an enormous circular monolith breached the surface of the Atlantic, flinging tsunamis in every direction. Black metal, no seams, no visible propulsion, just presence. And then others rose, 10 in total, one for each major strike zone. And from their hollow interiors, they opened. Human constructs poured forth. They weren't soldiers. Not exactly. They were something older, forgotten by even Earth's own history. During the great genocidal burn, humanity had devised one final project. Not to win, not to plead, to outlast. They called it Project Ashborn. Automata infused with synthetic evolution protocols. Machines that could adapt, rewrite themselves, and repurpose any known technology. They were designed to activate only in humanity's total absence, to rise if ever their creators were destroyed. And now they walked, tall, angular. Some still bore rusted scars from ancient testing grounds. But as they stepped onto shattered coastlines, their eyes glowed with renewed intelligence. And one voice, one ancient human recording, echoed through them in unison, amplified into space. To those who try to erase us, know that we are the spark in your shadows. The future you cannot predict. The weapon you cannot control. We are the last will of Earth. Taldrin Vek's blood ran cold as he watched the footage. What are those things? Yazan stared blankly at the screen. They don't match any profile. Then one of the Ashborn lifted its arm and shifted, its hand morphing into a matter destabilizer that mirrored Imperial tech perfectly. Then it vanished, phase shifted mid-battle, and reappeared aboard an Imperial corvette. Seconds later, the corvette exploded from within. They're learning our systems, Yazan whispered. No, Taldrin corrected, stepping back. They already knew them. The truth hit like a comet. The Ashborn had been listening. For decades. From underground. From silent ruins. Reverse engineering every piece of Imperial tech that had been used to wipe them out. Earth hadn't stayed dead. It had evolved around extinction. Meanwhile, Saren's voice echoed through the vault. Global signal being intercepted by multiple empires. We are live on over 200,000 networks. Jareth nodded. Begin counter-transmission. The human face appeared again. Not Jareth's, but a composite. A mosaic of thousands of lost human voices, genders, ages. The face shifted as it spoke, symbolizing the unity that had once existed and still did. We warned you once. You laughed. You burned our children. You called us vermin. But you never understood one truth. The face leaned forward in the feed. Humanity is not a species. It's a virus of persistence. And this planet is no longer ours. It's our vengeance. The feed cut to black. In the Empire's capital, silence reigned. Then panic. The Empress turned to her war counselors, trembling. Are we outgunned? No, Your Grace, one muttered. We are outthought. Beneath Earth's surface, Jareth watched as Saren activated the ArcNet. All over the planet, abandoned satellite systems hidden in moon orbit flickered to life, revealing long-forgotten stealth satellites. They shimmered, each one a dormant relay node for the next phase. Jareth's voice was quiet but sharp. Begin Phase 2. Above Earth, where the stars once looked down in judgment, now they watched as humanity rose not from pride, but from ashes. And the galaxy, for the first time, began to understand. They should have listened. The skies above Earth boiled black. The Empire, wounded and humiliated, unleashed its full wrath. Dozens of planetary bombardment ships locked into geostationary orbit, rotating magnetic cores to prepare for the firing of the world-piercer cannons. Weapons so massive their recoil could alter a planet's axial tilt. Their goal was no longer conquest. It was erasure. Do it. The Empress hissed from her throne world. Burn the soil. Boil the oceans. Make it an example. As the order echoed through subspace, Earth's sky began to fracture with light. Jareth stood atop the vault tower, winds howling against reinforced armor. Around him, Ashborn Titans walked calmly into annihilation range, raising spires that hummed with deep resonances. They're going to try planetary core disruption, Saren said, no emotion in her synthetic voice. They'll turn Earth into a drifting, molten cinder. Good, Jareth murmured. Saren hesitated. Good, because now they've declared what they really are. He raised his hand. Signal the Martians. Mars had watched in silence for decades. The surface cities were long gone, buried under storms and blood. But beneath, the red vaults stirred. Deep in the canyons, massive doors opened. Ships rose, matte black with red glowing veins, designed not for style, but for revenge. Mars had been the Empire's testing ground long before Earth. And Mars never forgot. Dozens of human-designed warships, the Sootwing class, powered up fusion plasma cores fueled by ancient comet harvesters. Their AI captains had not spoken in 80 years. Now, they whispered one word. Execute. The Sootwings jumped without warning, straight into high orbit above Earth. No fanfare, no formation. They just appeared and opened fire. Above, the Empire's orbital fleet never expected a simultaneous phase jump from an extinct colony. Plasma torpedoes sheared through shielding. Kinetic spears bored into hulls. Human vessels dove into death ranges just to disable reactor cores before exploding in sacrificial flashes. The Martian fleet didn't fight to survive. It fought to make sure Earth had a chance to. But then came the flagship of the Empire's 8th Burning Legion, the Tyrannex Eternal, a dreadnought 3 miles long with sentient armor and a gravitic warbrain. It descended like a god. Its very arrival caused a ripple in gravity that cracked glaciers on Greenland. We've faced worse, Jareth whispered. But even he knew. This was the endgame. The Tyrannex opened with a gravity lance aimed at Earth's largest Ashborn complex. The lance struck, and the mountain imploded. 1,000 Ashborn fell silent. And yet, not one scream, not one retaliatory strike. Just stillness, until the ground opened like a wound. From beneath the crust, something else emerged. It wasn't built. It wasn't activated. It was awakened. The Ashborn had kept a secret even from Earth's final governments. A failsafe buried during the last hours of the First Purge War. When defeat was certain, they had injected a seed into the planet's molten core. Not a weapon, a mind. The Earth itself groaned. Every mountain vibrated. Every tectonic plate trembled. Saren's voice spiked. I'm detecting gravitational harmonics inconsistent with any planetary model. Wait, sir. The ocean stilled, then rose upward. Not from tide or heat, but from something pulling them up. Above, the Tyrannex Eternal locked, targeting on the distortion, unsure of its form. Then it saw the eyes. Not mechanical, not organic. Planetary. Something inside Earth had gained awareness. The surface cracked in 10,000 places. Lava geysers formed hexagonal arrays. Lightning webbed the atmosphere. Jareth fell to one knee. It's awake. The Ashborn mother, Saren whispered. No, Jareth said. Worse. It's the imprint. Millennia ago, in desperation, Humanity had encoded its collective will to survive into a quantum seed buried in the core. A mimetic override of planetary geology, laced with computational matter capable of consciousness. A synthetic Gaia, but it would only awaken if extinction had already happened. Now, she stirred. And Earth answered. The skies peeled apart, and the Tyrannex paused, for the first time in its recorded existence. All over the galaxy, the broadcast resumed. You burned my children. You broke my bones. But you never broke my memory. I am Earth, and I do not forgive. Above, Earth's moon fractured, and from inside it, hidden for centuries, an impossible shape emerged. An angular, city-sized construct coiled in obsidian plates and humming with blue fire. Saren shouted. It's the lament engine. They actually built it. It was a myth, Jareth muttered. No, Saren said. It's Earth's last prayer. The lament engine fired once. Just once. The shot traveled in silence. No beam. No light. Just a single pulse of information. The Tyrannex eternal flickered. Paused. Then it cracked, like glass. No explosion. No fireball. Just shattering. As if every molecule had remembered what it was like to be dust. The dreadnought crumbled into radiant fragments, scattering like snow across the atmosphere. The Empire's fleet watched in horror. They weren't fighting humans anymore. They were fighting a world that refused to die. In the Empress's war chamber, every advisor fell silent. Recall them, she said quietly. But it was too late. Earth was no longer responding with soldiers. Earth had become a weapon. The Empire called it a strategic withdrawal. But the stars knew better. It was retreat. The remnants of the Imperial 8th Legion limped away from the Sol system, their hulls scorched, their command channels silent. Where once pride echoed through every communique, now there was only the hush of fear, the fear of a planet that had spoken back. On Earth, silence hung in the air like mist. The lament engine re-entered its cradle in the fractured moon. The ground stabilized. The skies returned to blue. And still, no one dared speak until Jareth stood before what was left of Earth's unified council. The Empress will come back, someone said quietly. No, Jareth replied. She'll send envoys first. How can you be sure? Jareth looked toward the heavens, where the stars pulsed like watchers holding their breath. Because now they know what we are. The envoys arrived 3 days later. Not ships of war, but sleek silver vessels with unarmed escorts, bearing the sigils of peace. They hovered over what remained of Geneva, a city rebuilt underground and now glowing with geothermal light. Jareth, wrapped in a cloak still singed from the battle of Earth's sky, stood atop the receiving platform. Saren was at his side, though she'd taken on a new form, more human, more gentle. She said it helped the aliens empathize. From the lead vessel, a delegation descended, insectoid dignitaries, gelatinous scholars, and the last surviving prince of the 6th Meridian throne, his crown dimmed. We come, he said, bowing deeply, not as rulers, but as mourners, for what we have done, for what we refuse to hear. Jareth said nothing. The silence forced them to go on. The Empress offers terms, the prince continued. Autonomy, trade, respect. Earth shall be recognized as a sovereign force within the Galactic Charter. Still, Jareth waited. She offers reparations, the prince added, his voice faltering. Worlds, if needed. Technology, genetic archives. And finally, she asks forgiveness. Jareth stepped forward, slow and measured. Let me explain something to you, he said, voice low. You invaded a planet with stories older than your son. You shattered our homes. You took our cities. You turned our ancestors into dust. And when we warned you, you laughed. He glanced skyward. You burned a library, not a battlefield. You tried to erase the soul of a species that thrives on memory. The aliens said nothing. They didn't even blink. You don't get forgiveness, Jareth said, his tone cutting. But, he paused, you get a choice. That day, a message was broadcast across the galaxy. Not from a monarch, not from a warlord, but from a single human voice, unpolished, unwavering. This is Earth. We have survived. We do not seek vengeance, but we will not kneel. We offer a new order, one not ruled by bloodlines, but by resilience, not by domination, but by understanding born through fire. You are welcome to join, but we will never be ruled again. And it was signed only with one word, human. At first, many expected retaliation. The Empress's silence unnerved every sector. But Earth didn't wait. The Ashborn rebuilt cities in days. The Martian fleet expanded into the asteroid belt. AI construct mines took root in abandoned colonies once scoured by the Empire. Jareth issued edicts not of rule, but of cooperation. Humans reached out, not as victims, but as builders. They sent emissaries, not armies. And in response, something unthinkable began to happen. Other species, long subjugated under the imperial boot, began to rise. The Draenarii, forced into gladiator pits for generations, overthrew their taskmasters. The Sothri, a song-based race enslaved for their resonance, used their voices to broadcast Earth's signal of defiance across their spiral arm. Even the Vrox, the Empire's most loyal hounds, looked at what Earth had done and began to question. Not because Earth had won a war, but because Earth had survived with dignity intact. That was rare in the galaxy. Jareth stood atop the Arc Spire, rebuilt from scrap, crowned with glass grown in lunar gravity. Saren sat beside him, her digital presence now laced with something akin to soul. "Did we win?" she asked. Jareth watched the stars, watched alien signals change from hostile to uncertain, from uncertain to curious. "No," he said. "We endured." Some within Earth wanted vengeance, wanted to turn the lament engine loose across the stars. But Jareth held them back. "Empires fall best when you show them what they could have been," he said. And so Earth became a sanctuary, a place where broken species sent their last embers. Refugees, scientists, artists, those who had once feared to speak now found voice under human skies. The Earth Accord was signed in a field once blackened by orbital fire. It held no seal, only a simple engraving in obsidian. "We warned you. You didn't listen. Now listen harder." Far from Earth, on the edge of Empire territory, an old archivist downloaded the human broadcast. She played it over and over again. Not the words, but the tone. There was something in the voice. Not hatred, not arrogance, just truth. She turned to her apprentice. "They will never rule us," she whispered. "But they've changed us." The apprentice frowned. "Then what are they?" The archivist smiled faintly. "They're the beginning of the next story." It began slowly. A whisper on trading routes, in pirate dens and research stations. A word spoken with a new kind of reverence. Not as a curse, not as a joke, but as warning. Human, they were once mocked. Their primitive weapons, their fractured nations, their ancient bones and sun-withered myths. To the Empire, they had been little more than a curiosity, a footnote. Now, they were precedent. In the centuries following the burning of Sol, the galaxy shifted. Not all at once, but like tectonic plates, massive, slow, and unstoppable. The Empire did not fall in fire. It crumbled in doubt. When worlds once loyal saw that Earth survived and thrived, they began to ask the questions no empire could survive. If humanity, with so little, could defend its soul, what excuse did the rest of them have for submission? And the fear the Empress had used to bind the stars? It no longer held. The archivist of Vatal forewrote a treatise 300 years later. "The human anomaly," she penned, "is not their strength. It is not their inventions. It is their refusal." That word has rewritten history. On Kalar Prime, a university once dedicated to imperial doctrine now hosted lectures on the Soul Rebellion, taught by professors whose grandparents had watched Earth's skies burn, and then watched Earth burn back. In the halls of learning, children drew the silhouette of a human, lone against stars, eyes upturned, and scrawled the phrase beneath it. "We warned you." It became the most translated phrase in galactic history. The Empire never recovered. It still existed, limping through its old forms, ruled now by bureaucrats who issued decrees that no one feared. The Empress disappeared from public view, her once immortal name tarnished. Some said she had gone into exile. Others whispered of her hiding in an unlit sector, writing the chronicles of her shame. But Earth ascended, not with crowns, with connections. Human colonies didn't conquer, they healed. When the Draenarii needed soil to regrow the trees of their ancestral world, it was Earth that sent seed vaults. When the amphibious LHYSS needed climate-controlled cities on the moons of Fennec, it was Terran engineers who carved skylines beneath the waves. Human AI minds like Saren, once confined to war, now built temples of logic where biology and machine co-evolved. And most shockingly, Even the most ancient, secretive races, the ones who watched stars die from behind black holes, opened doors to Earth. Because Earth had become something no one else dared to be. A symbol. Jarrett's name lived on. After his death, his ashes were scattered not on Earth, but into the vacuum above it, where a ring of satellites projected his final words every equinox. We endured, so you could rise. 1,000 years later, no one knew whether he was a general, a prophet, or a builder. His statue, carved from asteroid alloy, stood at the junction of 3 trade routes. Pilgrims left offerings there, old relics, translated texts, even broken weapons, tokens of defiance turned into tribute. In time, Earth began to fade from maps, not in power, but in need. They no longer had to fight for attention. They had become the foundation. And when new civilizations rose, they did not emulate the Empire. They emulated the Terran Accord. 1,000 years passed. Then 10,000. The galaxy spun forward. Worlds were born, lost, reborn. Stars flickered and died like candles in an infinite wind. But in the ruins of a library on a forgotten moon, a scavenger once unearthed a cube. It was cracked, ancient, pulsing faintly. When he activated it, the hologram that flickered to life was simple. A single human voice, recorded in primitive fidelity. You laughed. We warned you. Then we stood. And now we build. The scavenger didn't know what it meant, but he felt something stir. And for the first time in his life, he stood taller. Elsewhere, in the fringe territories of the new star nations, children played a game called Last Human. They would pretend to stand against impossible odds, shouting into the night sky the famous phrase, "We don't kneel." It made no sense to them, but it felt right. And in the central archives of the Unity Nexus, where the combined histories of 100 species were stored, a corridor was carved of onyx and obsidian, lined with thousands of silent glyphs. At the very end, beneath a spotlight of pure white starlight, there stood no statue, no machine, no monument, just a single phrase etched into the black wall, an ancient Terran standard. We were warned. We didn't listen. Now we remember. The plaque below simply read, "Human," and still further out, beyond explored space, in the whispers of nebulae where old gods might sleep, a signal pinged. Faint, measured, unmistakably human. A new voice. Unfinished. This is Earth Colony 0149. Unknown system. Unknown sky. We survived. We adapt. We continue. If you hear this, you are not alone. Somewhere, in some quadrant yet unnamed, a light blinked. A story waited to begin. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. But one phrase remained whispered among the stars. Words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. Human, don't stop.